Hi, welcome back to Dirtbag Baseball Talk, everybody. As again, Jason Colleron, Kinetic Arm and Elite Edge Fitness out of the Atlanta area in Georgia, staying with us. And this week we're going to get right after it. We've been talking about his Kinetic Arm product, training aid for throwers, pitchers, everybody on a ball field. We've talked about a little bit of the fitness component of it, and now we're going to get into the actual part of throwing. And I say throwing because, yes, it gets related to pitching, but like Jason and I talk about, if you can't throw properly, how could you ever be able to pitch properly? So that's what we're going to talk about today, is really what's happening with the upper body. Obviously, everybody out there has probably heard that phrase, the kinetic chain, right now and stuff. So we know the importance of the lower half. We're not trying to avoid it. We'll talk about that in future episodes. But today we want to really concentrate on what's happening through the shoulder area, the upper half of the body. So Jason's got his friends with him today. He's got Mr. Skeleton, and in behind you're going to see momentarily afterwards, you'll see the mannequin, and we're going to go to work. So he's going to talk on the skeleton at first about what's happening, and then on the mannequin, he actually has the kinetic arm, and we're going to start showing the value in it, the true value of it, and the intent behind it. So we're excited about it. Sit back, get your favorite drink, enjoy this episode with us. And Jason, you know what? Great having you back. Let's get after this because I know you're hungry and you're excited about it. So let's just start off really easy in that. Maybe some things that parents can be looking for in their son or daughter when they're throwing, or an amateur coach out there as well, what they need to be looking for to make sure what's right and what's wrong and happening.
Okay, so when I have a lot of parents and kids come in, either they've been injured, they've gone to a specialist, ortho, PT, or, post-injury, they always, when I break it down on the skeleton, they say, how come nobody else has shown us this? So I really love the opportunity to share this with as many people as I can, because we often get misled with kind of bad information out there, or, just giving you the power to better understand how the shoulder functions, and then seeing here on the skeleton how it functions just gives you a much better idea of how to identify and correct dysfunction. So we'll definitely start out and go over a couple of things that would cause, shoulder impingement.
For sure. And just so you understand, Dirtbags, you're not alone at this. If you've had these issues already, arm soreness, shoulder soreness, back soreness, whatever it is, through throwing, you're not alone in the fact that Jason's living proof of it himself, but also, you know what, you can go from Nolan Ryan to Roger Clemens to Randy Johnson to Pedro Martinez to right now Jacob deGrom. The list goes on and on. We know we all have it. So what we're trying to do is make you understand and be educated enough to be able to self-correct. Because I think just before we dive into it, Jason, that's the biggest thing that troubles you and myself, right? Person gets an arm soreness, what do? They go to the physiotherapist. And what's the common denominator? Well, they probably don't really know, and not being mean, but just rest.
Yeah, and a big problem with that is if you don't correct the problem, it's just going to come right back. Because if you've developed some kind of muscular imbalance, and remember, muscle stabilized joints. So if we've had some kind of muscular imbalance, like with the scapular glenohumeral joint, and we don't do anything to correct it, that rest may get rid of the symptom, but it's not going to fix the problem. So that's why, for me, personally, for almost 20 years, arm pain would come back. So if we can show you a couple of things to identify and maybe some simple ways to correct them, I think that would be really valuable for parents to just kind of take a look at their son or daughter and, see how their posture is, see how their shoulders are moving, and give them some opportunities to, correct that, maybe while they're resting or before they have that symptom, the pain or discomfort.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So you love to throw those words around like everybody in the medical world and that. So abduction, internal rotation, external rotation. If you don't mind, just take them. So, and it's great having you with it, because not only do we have Mr. Skeleton to be able to show it, but you can physically show it yourself, a little bit of what you're talking about. So explain a little bit of what you see when you're talking about those things like abduction or external or internal rotation and stuff.
So a big thing that you can identify on your own, if your son or daughter has one scapula that's kind of dropped, or we call it depressed, or if it's kind of sitting forward, those can really cause shoulder issues. And if there's an issue with the shoulder, usually it's going to go down to the elbow. So, it can bounce back and forth as well. So if you treat the shoulder, get the pain to go away there, it can go to the elbow and vice versa. But what happens is if you have, so let's say your shoulder should sit here. When your arm rotates up to the side, you see how this scapula comes up as this humerus goes up? So for every 2 degrees of motion here, we have 1 degree of motion with the scapula. So if that doesn't happen, you can see this little gap here. So we have what's called the acromion and the humeral head, so the top of your arm. And if the shoulder doesn't rotate up, you see how that gap closes and we get impingement. So we got kind of bone on bone. So your rotator cuff's actually pretty thick. So it's going to happen sooner than you would think. So if you have an anterior tilt and you try to lift your arm all the way up, you're going to only get to about there. But if you were to pull it back and clear the structure right here with that glenohumeral joint, then you can get a lot more shoulder flexion. So that's a big thing to look for. So if your son or daughter has kind of an anterior tilt, one thing you can do to correct it that's very simple, you can have them go into retraction. So kind of pull that scapula back. So we'd want to take it towards the spine this way. So have them pull it all the way back, hold it there for about 5 seconds, and then relax and keep doing that, kind of going back and down and back. Because if we put the tension back here on those scapular retractors, we can hopefully fix this upward rotation. Another one too is if you see kind of that drop or that anterior tilt and the drop, what that means is all these muscles on this backside or posterior side and all the muscles that do scapular elevation to clear this structure when the arm rotates up, these guys are so tired that they're kind of shut down. So what you can do is, again, positional isometrics. So you can have them shrug. So if this shoulder is kind of down, have them shrug up and hold it there for about 5 seconds as high as they can, and then down. And then I would kind of go up and back so we get elevation and retraction. So by doing this, a lot of people throw around the term activating muscles. With corrective exercise, you're just going to reinforce the compensation pattern. And I know that from experience from my pec ripping off the bone and having it put back on. And then I still couldn't produce any force with my chest. So people that talk about, corrective exercise, it's kind of a myth. So if we do some very light isometrics like that, the brain now recognizes, okay, that's not too much of a demand or too much force to where those muscles that are shut down can't participate. So that's a good way to kind of reintegrate them back into the throwing motion and get this shoulder functioning a lot better.
Yeah, that's fantastic for sure. And I guess, some of the old time terms or whatever, and that, like you were saying, look for like kind of rounded shoulders. We used to always say rounded shoulders, right? Where the shoulders were tucked in, you kind of hunchbacked and stuff like that. And you're right. I mean, just in a person that's in a non-throwing sport, you end up with, spinal pain and shoulder pain and everything. And the longer you sit like that, right? So exactly right. It's just probably just even sitting in class, if they were in a classroom every now and again at school, right? Young kid, just kind of sit tall, pull it back, and put yourself in a good posture. There's many ways you could do that, isn't there?
Yeah, and so while they're sitting there, definitely, I mean, and the young athletes that I have come in, even the professional athletes I have come in, they've had a lot of success. And again, I know simple doesn't sell. These are very simple. They're a little tedious, but they're extremely effective. So another thing too, if you're sitting at a desk and you have that kind of protracted shoulder, I call it, the mouse arm, because when you're reaching for that mouse or the keyboard, it's going to put you in that position. So if you have the muscles on this front part of the shoulder in a short position, for a long period of time, it's almost like you have your neck turned or your head turned having a conversation on an airplane. When you go to look back to center, you got to kind of undo that tension because that homeostasis kicks in. So it wants to tighten up those muscles to hold you stable in that position. So if that's a repetitive motion or just a position you're in for an extended period of time, it'll do you a lot of good. So retract 5 seconds and then kind of elevate, retract 5 seconds. So you can do it several times a day throughout the day, and it's not enough force to where it's going to really fatigue anything or shut anything down. So I definitely recommend that the baseball players or any throwing athletes do that even before practice or before they're going to warm up. Even if they do their band work, remember, if you're doing your stretches, try not to do too much because it's going to shut a lot of things down. We can also look at that on here as far as the structure and causing impingement. But if the coaches are making you stretch a lot, definitely follow up with those isometrics so you put the force back into the muscular system, because remember, muscle stabilized joints. And you can see on the skeleton that this is a ball and socket joint. This is not a very deep socket. This is actually pretty flat. So that's why you have your labrum that makes it a deeper socket. And then when we get a slap labrum, that's superior labrum. So it's up at the top, anterior to posterior. So if you don't have adequate rotation, adequate trunk rotation, your throwing side, or your trunk is rotating faster than your arm can keep up with, and that's a big benefit of the sleeve that prevents that from happening. So we can take a lot of stress off that anterior labrum and help reinforce kind of that glenohumeral joint and keep this ball in the socket.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's fantastic. Talk to me a little bit, because I've heard it over the years, about the balance of strengthening your decelerating muscles versus your accelerating muscles. I think that's a really important thing, because we love our beach body, right? We love to look in the mirror. We love the front side of our body because that's what we see, but we don't see the back part of it, right? And if you don't mind, just take a couple seconds to explain or talk about, accelerate, what muscles are the accelerating muscles for throwing, and what ones would be the decelerating ones, and a bit of an image or a bit of a guideline of creating an even balance, if you will, throughout their body as they strengthen.
Okay, so the muscles on the front side, so we would have pec major. So that's a big one that attaches all along here on the sternum. And then right about here on the humerus. So you can see that would elongate as you go back. And then when you externally rotate, you're making it even longer. So besides just the rotator cuff muscles, you've also got pec major, you got your anterior delt, you've also got the long head of the bicep. So quite a few that would bring it forward. Now, when the scapula, a lot of people miss this, but when the scapula goes back, we actually will protract it as we come forwards. So we have a muscle called your serratus that attaches in here on this medial border of the scapula and then on the ribs. So it kind of pulls it forward that way and also helps glide it around this this rib cage. So those are a couple on the front side. Then on the back side, we've got the scapular retractor. So again, they pull it this way. So in concentric means it would contract like this, and then eccentric means it kind of controls how it elongates. So almost like a braking system. So we've got several. We've got upper trap that attaches out here. So what that's going to do is that's going to upwardly rotate the scapula. We've also got middle trap that I got a screw here so this won't glide, but you can imagine this shortening. And we've also got lower trapezius that would attach here. So those, as well as we've got the rhomboids that attach on this medial border and go this way and attach onto these, what you would feel as your spine, called the spinous processes. So those help kind of bring it this way. So definitely do those isometrics. So remember the elevation and retraction before you do your training, because then, yes, if you turn the muscles on and activate them, then you're actually going to use them when you're doing your exercises. So for some of the exercises like rows, you can stay in a scapular retracted position and then go from there. I don't recommend it for a lat pull down, because you're going to get impingement on the front of your shoulder if you keep them down as this goes up. So just kind of let it glide up and then pull down from there. But muscles back here are extremely important, because again, as they get tired, your shoulders should sit kind of up here. What's going to happen is you're going to get that scapular depression or that anterior tilt where it's kind of this lower and then coming more around the front. And that's what's going to cause, again, the impingement where your rotator cuff's right here. It's going to pinch that between the bones. So we have to have normal motion there.
Definitely. No, there's no question about it. So I think what we're trying to say there, coaches, parents, and players, do not cheat one side of your body on this. You can't, because I know Jason does it. I see it quite often, and especially with younger players, very, very weak on that backside of your body. Those three trap muscles that Jason was just talking about, I see a lot of weakness in that. And yes, they get away with throwing it and stuff like that, but long term, it is not going to end in a good result for sure. So even for bands, I would think you would agree, Jason, bands, you'll see a lot of people doing the front side, right? But I wonder how many people cheat and don't get the backside going with the bands. And coaches let them away with it too, right? Because they're like, well, they're warmed up. We got to get going with practice. We got to get going with practice. Well,
yeah, that's often rushed. And a big kind of bonus and takeaway all the athletes that I have come in, they haven't really been told this, but if we're just doing internal and external right here, you can see this isn't really the part that we use to throw. We're actually up here, right? So if we look at where this attaches, so the muscle is pulling a straight line. So this is going to shorten the most there. But if you see it down here, not really going to shorten nearly as much. So what we would want to do, because that shortens in a straight line, you see how that's kind of perpendicular to the center of that joint? My thumb's in the way.
Yeah, you're good.
So if we lift this humerus up and then do the external rotation there, you see how that's more shortening in a straight line versus if it was here. Keep that tension. Again, muscle stabilized joints. So you see how here it's just kind of rotating, but it's not really shortening, versus here, it's actually going to shorten. So always remember, do it as a position specific movement with the band. So it's fine to do, things down here, but you'd really want to come up here and then kind of work it more in that range. Also, you can keep that retraction with the shoulder. So keep your shoulder back and then do it from there. So you're working your external rotators while you're keeping an isometric hold on those scapular retractors. So that way you kind of get like a 2-for-1 bonus. So it's kind of like you're doing your isometrics while you're doing your band work.
Fantastic information right there. Thank you. I don't know which one you want to go with. If you want to stay with Mr. Skeleton, you want to slide over to your mannequin, but let's kind of show them what's really happening throughout the whole arm when we're in a throwing motion. I know we'll start with the shoulder and the upper body and that, and you may want to stay with Mr. Skeleton, like you said, Jason, but if you have to transfer over, by all means, go ahead. Because, obviously in the lower half, obviously hand through elbow through shoulder, a lot of things are happening and that's why it's such a specific skill set, throwing a baseball. It really is.
Yeah, and it's a very, very fast skill. So, things happen quite rapidly. So trying to sync up the timing, that's why I like to recommend doing the retraction, with the external, because the more you can kind of hone in on that motor control and try to contract one thing without the other, or have multiple contractions going on at one time, just kind of makes it easier to put it all together. You kind of have, for kids, we could say better body awareness or coordination. So when we're throwing, we've got what I call this horizontal abduction. So the scapula would come back. And again, you see at the front, this almost kind of wants to pull out, but the scapula is moving, so it's not going to happen. So we've got this going back, then we have the external rotation here. And again, if the arm is going back and this humerus is torquing forward, that small gap there, that's where we have the medial ligaments of the elbow, so the UCL. Also, down here on this medial epicondyle, that's where those forearm flexors attach right there. So that's kind of all the safety that we have going over that UCL. So with kids, they'll get a lot of wear and tear there that would turn into little league elbow, and then you can get what's called the epiphyseal fracture, where that actually keeps pulling so much and the growth plates hadn't hardened that it cracks away. So we've got to make sure that we've got this glenohumeral joint stable. We've got good muscle tension there. The scapula is able to rotate how it should. And then when this is coming back and we have that external rotation, this is actually the weakest position. So muscle strength is like a bell curve. At mid-range, you're the strongest, end range, you're the weakest. So I always say there's not a pitcher on earth that can stand here and actively go all the way back and put their forearm horizontal. So if we're passively having to take it to that position, it's kind of crazy to think that we can actually produce force there. So what happens is, as the trunk is rotating forward, the arm is just kind of along for the ride. So the muscular system's not able to stabilize all that much. Forearm flexors could be at end range, but that's when we have the most valgus stress, or that separation right here at the medial elbow. So those are some things that we need to make sure, not only do we have adequate trunk rotation, but also shoulder function, and then that's going to help take some stress off the elbow. If we're limited in any area, it's going to cause the other areas to try to make up for that motion, and they're also going to take up that stress.
And you just said something fantastic. The arm goes along for the ride. And I know I'm always pounding that into our players that we work with and stuff like that, or online talking with coaches and stuff like that. I don't think there's enough appreciation for what that means, and the fact that the arm is along for the ride, right? And I guess I try to relate it in the fact that When we walk, we're not the Matrix. We're not the movie The Matrix where we can do all that fancy stuff. The rest of our body has to follow our feet, right? We have no choice. We have to go for the ride. We don't think about it though, do we? We just do it naturally. But yeah,
so it's automatic orchestration from the brain. So that's, we can walking, we could even call that a skill, because whether it is, it is automatic, but we could call it an involuntary reorchestration of center of mass over base of support or point of contact, which just means your brain automatically knows how to balance you in your gait as you move forward. Same thing with running. So same thing with throwing. It's a more complex skill because, we don't throw to get in the house. We don't throw to get out to the car and throw while we're, getting out of the car. But, because we're on our feet more, it's kind of easier to manage that skill. But with throwing, it's something where if there's a repetitive motion throughout the day, if we're sleeping in a bad position. So if I'm internally rotated with my arm up, I can cause impingement at that glenohumeral joint. So you're sleeping like this, just smashing that rotator cuff the whole night. So that's another thing to be aware of. What are some repetitive movements you're doing throughout the day? What's the position you're in for an extended period of time? And these are a lot of questions that medical professionals don't think to ask because they kind of have their set protocol. Now, not all of them, but the majority of them, and a lot of the people that I have come in, with elbow or shoulder pain, they just kind of go through the set protocol, and then I'll ask plenty of questions, and we can find out it was, something that we easily identified, and we got the pain to go away.
Fantastic. Yeah, for sure. Finishing up on this part here, what arm position would you say would be probably the healthiest overall? Obviously, pitchers at the pro level or whatever, and that you get, 90 degrees, you get the hand outside the elbow, 3/4, whatever the terminology you want to use. Some are short armers or whatever, and that, like a catcher a little bit inside. For me, it's a 90 degree for me when I'm talking with them, and I can kind of show them the power that included with their body, not just their arm or whatever, and that. But I might be wrong. So, what would you suggest?
So we're going to get. It's almost like you want it to be, as this is coming through, if this is our axis that we're spinning around, we kind of want that perpendicular. So if you were to put like a ball on a string and swing it around a stick, it's not going to go, up at this angle or kind of down to this angle. That's where you're going to get the best kind of bang for your buck with that rotational velocity. One thing to look at as well, when some people throw, sometimes, I've had some dad's messages, and again, I respond to all the messages. I've been getting some awesome questions, getting videos of kids throwing. Hey, what do you think? So one of them, he was concerned because it appeared that the elbow was high. However, he didn't see the lateral flexion on this glove side. So if his brain is orchestrating that as kind of the best solution, kind of seeing what's available and how he can throw the most efficiently, make sure to look for that lateral flexion. So you'll see some slow-mo or still shots of a lot of professional pitchers, and as they're coming over, they have that lateral flexion. So it appears to be up here when in reality, you're right here. So structurally at the shoulder, that's not a bad thing. Now, if you're throwing from up here, yeah, that's going to give you impingement and shoulder pain pretty fast. So that's definitely a position to stay away from. But definitely, if you were to swing, a ball on a string around, the stick, that axis, that'd be your perpendicular. You'd have kind of 90 degrees right there.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that's important. I'm glad, because you still hear it in this day and age of, get higher, get that arm up there. Well, like I said, just literally, parents, coaches, literally lift your shoulder up, lift your elbow up, and you can feel your muscles pinching against each other, like Jason's talking about. There's nothing healthy about that at all. But you bring it down into that 90 degree and stuff like that, level through the elbow and shoulder or whatever, you feel it open up, like Jason's been talking about here. So just something to be really aware of. The little things that we say, we don't mean to, but let's get you speaking properly. Let's get you educated like we're trying to do. So, all right. So we've got that part of it going. Why is the kinetic arm great? Puts you in those positions. How does it isolate you? What all does it do, big fella?
So we mentioned the muscles on the front side that elongate. So the lines of force inside this, they are pretty much spot on to where your muscles attached already. So we're not changing the way anything functions. So on this, I made a theoretical model. So we have one axis going this way. So this is the new updated version that we'll have in 2 weeks. So I don't know if you can see that piece on the chest, but as the arm goes back into horizontal abduction, you can see the tension build. So what that's going to do is as we come back this way, and remember at end range, we're the weakest position. Remember, we can't actively get there on our own. So it's going to help pull us out of that end range with horizontal abduction. And also with the tension building, I mentioned sometimes as the trunk rotates and guys are tired, the arm kind of lags behind. So this is going to prevent that from happening. It's also going to eliminate the stress on that the labrum. So we got that, remember, slap labrum tear, superior labrum, anterior to posterior. So it's going to eliminate kind of the distraction force at the front of the shoulder, and it's also going to offload these muscles. So it's almost like an insurance policy because it's going to help your muscles produce force in their weakest range. That way they're not fatiguing. We can cut down on overuse injuries. So it also helps compress this humerus into the glenoid, just like I showed on the skeleton. So it's kind of like having an external rotator cuff. There's also a little bit of pull out. So that way muscle called your supraspinatus, it's about the first, maybe 10 to 15 degrees of abduction. It's also going to offload that a little bit because we're always having to get our arm going. Now, when we go all the way back into that layback phase, so if I didn't have the sleeve on this mannequin, his arm would just flop back. So I built this just to show how much it'll actually slow that arm down at the end. And again, we're not restricting any motion, but you can see here, as it goes back, it's going to help in assisting to bring that arm forward. So we also talked about the muscles that cross the medial elbow, those forearm flexors that go across and touch down on the bone. So we saw a cool study that it was Ben Hansen, when he was with Modus, did on fatigue unit models. So when you're throwing fast, your forearms are going to get more tired and the elbow stress goes up. So they did some really cool research with the sensors to show that. So that's another good reason to have this, is because it's like a new muscle going up the front of this elbow. So there's a compressive element that brings this bottom forearm bone, the ulna, down into what's called the medial epicondyle, and that's where the ulnar collateral ligament attaches. So when you hear about Tommy John surgery, too much stress there, frays, and then eventually it ruptures. So as we go back into horizontal abduction, external rotation, we have this line of force that goes over and then kind of up this side of the arm. So we actually have a muscle on our lower body that already functions like this, called your sartorius. So that's why I say this is the first and only multi-joint dynamic stabilizer. If a product addresses just the shoulder, then you're going to have issues with the elbow and vice versa. So we touched on that a little bit with how everything has to function together. And if you have dysfunction at one joint, it's going to put that extra stress on the other joint. So we're reinforcing the shoulder and the elbow, and there's nothing else that does that, because we've got these arm sleeves that, I used to wear one. I'd load it up with Tiger Balm, capsaicin, Icy Hot Bengay. I found my old baseball bag the other day and there was everything in there. So that's the reason I would wear one, but it's not helping anything structurally or anything as far as offloading the muscular system. So when we're going back and throwing, we'll go back into external. A lot of the feedback we've gotten from the professional athletes is it gives them the perfect arm slot. So what they mean by that is it makes it feel more effortless, because as they get tired and their trunk is rotating and this arm would normally kind of lag behind, that would cause them to kind of miss high. So this doesn't let that happen. So what it does is it brings that arm back along for the ride without fatiguing everything on this front side that would, normally cause that motion. So it's actually keeping them down in the zone. We had Kyle Farnsworth in here a couple of weeks ago, and that was the first thing he said. And he actually blew his shoulder out, after 12 years in the big leagues playing football. And then we've had some guys with the Astros AA and some guys at the big league level that, we'll hopefully be able to talk about soon. But it's just the feedback's been great. We've had kids that were, one was scheduled for Tommy John surgery, and he was able to throw pain-free after putting this on. So just having this as kind of, a big insurance policy or something to offload the muscular system and the structure, especially for the younger kids. So this really helps coaches, parents, and athletes kind of figure out the best way to throw or the most efficient without putting all that stress on their arm. So not only that, but they can get more game speed reps in and throw harder in practice without trashing the arm, because for pitchers, around 90% of throwing is done outside of games. So you can imagine how much higher it is for position players and catchers. So even if you're just wearing it in practice, that's still 90% or more of the time that you're throwing. So you can really perfect everything, do whatever training program you're comfortable with kind of taking the arm issues out of the equation and see, if you get the results from that program. So you get to save your arm and, try different throwing programs.
Well, you're absolutely right, Jason. When you think about it, right, a game, you may not have any balls hit to you in the whole game. So you want to have that product on you in practice. I mean, there's your high-end reps, right?
Yeah.
That's anywhere from 1 to 1,000% more that could possibly happen in a game if you're not a pitcher or a catcher, obviously. But that's the reality of it for sure. So, and again, just remind the dirtbags out there, Jason, how many years have you been working at this? How much intent and purpose have you put behind this?
Oh man. So just to get the first working prototype that I brought to market, that was 5 years. It all had to be very precise. It's a very big problem that we're trying to solve. And some of the designers and manufacturers I've worked with, they kind of step back and they say, well, this has never been attempted before. I said, oh, well, that's great. Let's attempt it. But a lot of testing, retesting. I'm my biggest critic. I'm quite a perfectionist, big nerd. So, had to make sure everything functions how it should. So to figure out how much elasticity was needed in different parts of the range and how it could change throughout that range while keeping your arm from going into a dangerous position. It was a lot of R&D, and then we got a lot of good objective data on videos. And I did a lot of the testing with athletes that just finished a catching session or just finished a bullpen, because I wanted a tired arm to measure the stress, because I know it's going to be higher. And then when we would put this on, even though they were pretty tired after all that throwing, we'd still see their elbow stress go down.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I hope you can take away, dirtbags, the intent, the purpose, the passion, the love for what Jason created, but more importantly, the reason behind why he wanted to create it and why he continues to grow. And if it can be better, hey, we'll do it better again, stuff like that. And the added bonus to it, Jason Colleran, with the Kinetic Arm, is the fact that he genuinely will respond to you after you get a product or before you get the product and understand even more why you need to have that product. He puts his mouth where his money is, whatever the terminology you want to say, but he stands behind it because he believes in it. We're all in. It's funny because I know Jason had sent his or mine to me a couple of weeks ago or whatever, and that I just got a notice as we jumped off for this recording, literally noticed that, oh, it's out for delivery or whatever. So that's perfect. I've had to be patient on it because we got border and customs and all that stuff. So, but I can't wait. I can't wait, dirtbags, to get it on, get using it, because whether I'm throwing my batting practice for players that we work with, just throwing it on a throwing program with them, I'm so excited about this because I know it works. I know it from my research and my history and stuff like that. I'm so excited to have found you. So excited that you're in part with this. And the most exciting part of it is, and I know for you too, Jason, well, not the most exciting, but an added excitement to it is the fact that you're a couple of weeks away, a month away, whatever it is, to being able to launch the amateur model.
Man, so we're gonna have it hopefully by October 15th. So that's an updated version, and that's actually this one right here. So it's kind of a sneak preview, and this one's extremely user friendly. The last one, you had to figure out kind of the best position to adjust it, but again, it's an extremely complex problem that we're trying to come up with a solution for. So it definitely worked. It just would take a little bit of time to figure out. But this one you can just put on. You don't have to go through your stretches, your band work. You can just put it on and start throwing. That's it. So it's kind of ready to go right out of the box. Comes pre-assembled. The last entire shipment I would pre-assemble for people. If they told me their height and weight, I'd try to get it, perfect form right away. So this one, you just, put it on, cinch it down, and you're ready to rock.
That is awesome. That is fantastic, bro. You got to be excited, man. You got to be excited.
Yeah, just hearing the feedback from the parents and athletes about, being able to play pain-free or how much their velocity went up. Or even from coaches that have to throw a lot of batting practice and instructors. It's awesome to hear, because again, I don't want people to go through what I went through with arm pain from, age 12 on. Baseball got me to where I am today, paid my way through college. But if I can help young athletes, stay in the game and enjoy everything that baseball teaches about life, help them get to the next level, or, help the big guys stay in the big show, then to me, that's just awesome to give back.
Yeah. So there you have it, Dirtbags. I mean, hey, at the end of the day, if you can't throw properly, how could you ever be able to pitch? If that doesn't make sense, then Jason and I are already beat. but we do know it, and that's why we're making a little bit of light of it, but serious intent behind it, because let's get you throwing right. And if you can throw right, then pitching is just secondary to it. But if you can't even throw properly, something in the body's not working right, or there's a disconnect somewhere, we've got to identify it. We've got to start solving it and fixing it so you can move forward successfully throwing, but pain-free and healthy and strong at the whole time. All right. So, hey, you know where you can go. You go right to thekинeticarm.com. Start researching if you're new to the episode, new to what Jason and I are trying to do here. Again, thekинeticarm.com. Go there, research, contact Jason. I'm asking you to contact, don't think about it, contact the guy. He's as genuine as you see him here on Dirtbag Baseball Talk with me. Couldn't be more open, more passionate about it, and start researching it and get going with it, get it on board. And I know next time Jason and I are going to talk about the lower half, I think the stabilizing of the front side, how that connect chain works from the ground up, help you out with that. And then we'll carry on to probably catchers and fielders and different things like that as well, how it all can work and get you strong, healthy, but the right activities and strength and conditioning moving forward to help, again, like Jason said, evolve your game, grow your game, keep it fun, keep it smiling, and keep your passion and drive for it. Whether you're a player, a parent, a coach, it doesn't matter. So thank you as always for being here. Jason, thank you for all the time that you always are given.
Anytime. Love it.
Exactly. I mean, I get jacked up. I get jacked up when I know I'm coming on with you, buddy. I love it. Again, thank you very much. So Dirtbags, until the next episode, get out there. If you haven't looked it up, thekинeticarm.com. Jason Colleran, get on it, get after it, and make it a part of your today, tomorrow, and future. Until the next episode, Jason and I, hey, you know what we want you to do. Get up, get after it, and get dirty.